was 10 years old when I decided I wanted to make films. It was actually Raiders of the Lost Ark, as strange as that is. I went and saw that in the theaters, and I was totally mesmerized, totally taken away, and said, not knowing that there were people that even made movies, or how to do it, or why. I was a kid growing up in a small town, and just decided I wanted to make films. And really went after it early. At 17, I started interning and trying to get on every film set I could, and it just went from there. Sons of Perdition is a feature-length documentary, and it follows 3 boys who have been kicked out of their FLDS community in Colorado City.
Oh, young people, eternity was within your reach if you will just live faithful so the prophet can place you properly in marriage. I want you to believe these stories. There are no monogamous in heaven. The men have many wives. And that is the way men become gods and their wives become heavenly mothers. Now, I want to tell you young people, it's a sin to even talk about boyfriends and girlfriends because you know the right way. But what happens to people that turn away from it? The Revelation says they will be destroyed.
For 2.5 years, we followed these boys who were kicked out of Colorado City, which is a polygamous community. And when they lived in this oppressive religion, they had a dictator prophet, Warren Jeffs, who kind of told them what to do. And they couldn't read books, they couldn't read magazines, they couldn't listen to music, they couldn't watch TV, they couldn't play sports. All they could do was church and work. And then one day, at the age of 15, 16, and 17, they kind of got pushed out, forced out. So we followed 3 boys for 2.5 years after they had kind of been thrust into a world they didn't know anything about. And we watched them grow up, we watched them make mistakes, we watched them miss their families badly.
Can't even talk to my mom or any of my brothers and sisters. To them, it would have been better for me to die than to leave.
So it's kind of a real coming-of-age fish-out-of-water story. But we also delve into the religion and Warren Jeffs and his tyrannical reign over these people. One of the boys as well, Joe, his 14-year-old sister is threatened with marriage. So he goes on this vendetta to try and get her out. And she escapes 6 different times, and each time gets taken back and sent back. So that's one of the running narratives of the film. And it's a rich and beautiful and heartwarming and heartbreaking story all at the same time that goes really into depth. We got never before heard sermons, photos, interviews from people that lived in that community. We really dug deep.
1890, they made polygamy illegal in the Mormon church. And a group of them, the group that I was raised with, or in, moved to the Short Creek area, or also known as Colorado City, and started their own religion. They call themselves the FLDS, which stands for Fundamental Latter-day Saints. They believe that polygamy was never supposed to be outlawed, and they live it no matter what the consequence. Warren Jeffs, the current prophet, has over 80 wives. Now, he went to him and said, I've had a revelation from God that I'm supposed to marry you, and married him.
You could be married to somebody who's very successful, or you could be married to somebody who is older than your father and your grandfather and looks very bad. You could be a first wife. You could be a second, third, on up to probably about the 50th. I think there are some men who have had 70 wives.
They said a woman's hair is sacred, so we don't cut it. It had to be what they call done up, which means you can have no dangling hair in the face. I didn't want to be a play kid, but I was just there, you know? And like people would stare at us and point at us and laugh at us. And it was almost like I wanted to scream because I wanted to yell at them and say, I don't want this. Just because I'm like this doesn't mean I want to be like this, you know?
As of this month, it will be 5 years. We worked on it for 5 years. Still working on it right now. When we started it, and I think the beautiful thing about documentaries is that, you know, all it really takes is camera, some passion, a good idea, and a little bit of time. You know, we self-funded at the beginning because, you know, when you're making a narrative, narratives aren't cheap and they cost money up front. Documentaries don't cost that much money up front. You just have to have some access, some cameras, and just to find a place that's close to home. You know, I've always said, you know, you hear the old axiom that when you're going to write your first screenplay or write your first novel, write what you know. And I think it's the same way with documentaries. Do something when you first do it, something you're passionate about, something you know, something you can get access to. So when we started it, we found this story, and both Jenny Lynn and I, Jenny Lynn is the co-director, Jenny Lynn Merton, she's the co-director, co-producer of the film. We had left the LDS church, and so we kind of knew what it was like on a different level to be kicked out of a religion of sorts, to be ostracized, to alienate your family, and disappoint your family and your community. So when we met these kids, we knew that it was kind of our story in a way, writ large. It was something we wanted to tell. And we just kind of dove in. We lived it. We were always accessible, and we gained trust with these kids. And you know, we sacrificed a lot as far as physical or aesthetics of the film in order to get access to these kids. It was interesting because as soon as we picked up a camera, you know, we'd lift up a camera and they'd change. Their ideas would change. The way they would speak, they'd be very cognizant that they're on camera. So a lot of times we just set the camera right here, you know, put it on our lap and just talk to them. And they would talk to us and really open up to us. And so, you know, we'd compromise framing, we compromised audio because we wouldn't, the minute we put a mic on the kids, they'd really change. In the end, it didn't matter. You know, are the shots not perfectly framed? Not everyone, no. Do they sound mediocre? In some of them, yeah. Does anyone care? No. Nuh-uh. But you know why I make films? You know, and I made a narrative film. It was called Take, starring Minnie Driver and Jeremy Renner, and then I just finished Sons of Perdition, the documentary. And you know, I love documentaries. I love watching them. I love making them. And I think there's this moment when when you're discovering and you see somebody. I think people aren't very articulate in general unless they're trying to figure something out about themselves. And as a documentarian, you can be there for that process. You can see them try and figure something out. You know, whether it takes an hour or a month or 3 years. And I love watching that process and being there for that process. And I think audiences like to see that because it helps them, because everyone goes through problems. And when they see that, both in a narrative or a documentary, when they see a main character overcome their problems, I think a lot of times it makes it easier for them.